Leave your comments on the Ask Reddit sub, and I'll read your answers on the next episode of LWIAR. What is the strangest mystery that is still unsolved? An unknown group of people broke into an FBI building, and no one has found out who they are. But the best part of the story is, they did it by leaving a sticky note that said, "Do not lock the door tonight," and it worked. Edit. To everyone asking how they left the note, they just stuck the note to the front door. Probably should have specified. Edit 2. I'm an approved member of our What's the Rule Now. Edit 3. I know it's been solved. I heard about it 8 years ago, and never learned that it was solved. The authorities actually managed to track them down to a shady motel room. But when they arrived, there was a sign on the doorknob which said, "Do not disturb." The perpetrators remain free to this day. That's hilarious and amazing. Imagine being the guy who left it unlocked. I think that would be everyone that day. Last one out was the most rotten egg, though. That might be related to the Scientologist break-ins. When they were working on getting their tax-free status for their organization, they needed to get intel and leverage against the government. So they simply ordered a few members to walk right into the FBI headquarters as if they were agents. They took what they wanted, and then left. en.m.wikipedia.org. The only organization to blackmail the US government publicly and win. That I know of. The government F up big time though. They filed federal tax evasion charges against many thousands of church members at the same time. They expected to get a big portion to plead out and turn evidence against other members. The government forgot that many lawyers are members. They all volunteered their time. They all filed motions for separate trials for all the tens of thousands of church members. The IRS did the math for the cost of all those trials inside the statute of limitations crap their pants, and settled everything out of court. To this day they are legally a church in the US. All charges were dropped against their members, and the church kept everything learned during Op Snow White out of the public. When you put it like that, holy crap, like they literally established a mini-kingdom in the US through strategy, blackmail, and cunning, against the government, and we're all okay with this. I mean, what are we gonna do, call the FBI? Just leave them a post-it note, crack down on Scientology. This is my favorite weird and barely known one. Back in 2013, an unknown group assaulted a power substation in California. By all appearances it was pretty sophisticated. Scouted firing positions, all casings wired to prints. They targeted transformers so they'd take time to overheat before triggering any alarms. Also knew exactly when the police would arrive. No suspect or motive to this day. They also cut some fiber optic cables in a vault nearby. Conspiracy types think it was a dry run by Russia or possibly China to see how effective an attack like that might be. en.wikipedia.org. Ooh, I like this one, I've never heard of it. What kind of Transformers, Autobots or Decepticons? Since the mystery was never solved, I'd say it's the perfect Optimus crime. I pushed a tiny amount of air out my nose. Look up a term called red cells and how they operate with NSA and DOD to protect sensitive domestic sites like power plants, airports, various gov facilities. Not a conspiracy by the way, there's actually tons of info available if you look. I remember reading about one red cell op where they successfully penetrated security at Andrews AFB and planted a fake bomb on Air Force One without being discovered. They've infiltrated control rooms at nuclear reactors and crap like that, too. Almost exclusively ex-Special Forces, Navy SEALs, Delta Squad, Rangers, ECT, FBI and DOD are the only ones who can legit keep tabs on them because they're technically private contractors. Yep, a few years back when I worked for a newspaper, I was embedded during a mock terrorist bombing at a large oil refinery. The security personnel were told there was an op underway, but they had no idea exactly when or where or how, etc. They were told it would happen between 2 dates. That's it. In that case, the terrorists blew up a rail car filled with chlorine gas. They put an inert IED on the rail car which would have exploded if it were real. I had a cop who got very aggressive with me until he saw my badge that denoted me as an observer, not a participant. The U.S. Army Special Forces train in North Carolina. They changed their ops when a couple of them got shot by local police because they resisted arrest during a training exercise. They also do it where I'm from, mountain area of NC. but they are now specifically restricted from involving civilians. Who was Perseus? From 1943 to 1946, the Soviet Union had a high-level spy in the Manhattan Project, codenamed Perseus. This spy was a scientist at the White Sands missile testing site in Nanometer, and the main research facilities in Los Alamos. Perseus saw pretty much the entire project start to finish, giving the Russians everything they needed to get to work on their own bomb. The fact that they were able to do so within 4 years of the end of World War II, when their nations was still devastated, is proof positive that Perseus helped a great deal. And to top it all off, Perseus was never caught or positively identified. That we know of. I don't think the US government would be keen to share the name of the person that sold out all their advancements to Russia. That's right. It could be embarrassing. Or the US could have assassinated him. Or the US could have turned him and work as a double agent. There are lots of different, but valid reasons why officials may not release Perseus's identity. Not to mention that this was decades ago, and the very people who organized whatever happened may have destroyed enough records to cover this up permanently. There's a chance that despite US officials knowing who Perseus was back then, they may have covered it up so well that US officials today don't know who Perseus was. It's all very fascinating. There's also the chance that US officials simply never found out because Perseus was such a damn pro. Probably Oppenheimer himself, because he realized that the type of absolute power nukes bestowed upon a person, country, it will corrupt them absolutely as well if there was no equal-footed adversary. That would be wild if true. Damn. The inventor of game theory, John von Neumann, advised towards the complete destruction of any potential nuclear powers before they develop their technology. According to game theory, this is the only way to win. The only winning move is not to play. The USS Cyclops, a coal ship, disappeared with 306 men, the largest U.S. Navy loss of life that didn't involve combat. en.m.wikipedia.org. Of the 4 built, 3 sank without a trace. Sounds like you could solve this mystery by making a model of the ship. They did exactly that on Expedition Unknown on Discovery Channel. They tried it, but it sank without a trace. If it doesn't sink without a trace, it's broken. The front fell off. What on earth happened to the Trump family? So it's this Australian family who owned a berry farm. Somehow Mr. and Mrs. Trump and their 3 grown kids developed the belief that they weren't safe and they needed to flee their farm without cell phones or anything traceable, credit cards, etc. It sounds like the oldest son wasn't sold on whatever it was that led them to flee. He brought his phone, but eventually it got tossed from the car. He ended up bailing first and taking a train home. From there, the rest of the family slowly separated and suffered various degrees of emotional breaks. The 2 girls stole a car. Somehow they got separated and one made it home, but the other was found on the floor in the backseat of some guy's car in a catatonic state. He spotted her after he started down the road. Eventually the parents were found wandering around aimlessly. Fortunately they were all okay physically, but WTF happened? Was someone actually after them? Were they delusional? As far as I know, the family hasn't released any updates. This is one of my favorites. One of the theories is that they were suffering from folie à deux, or madness of 2. The modern diagnosis is shared delusional disorder, basically meaning the whole family had a shared delusion. This case inspired my band song that I wrote, called Folie à deux. It's one of my favorite cases. Sounds like it could have been CO2 poisoning. Delusions while at home, then after they leave they slowly come back to normal. Edit. I meant it's CO. Carbon monoxide poisoning. I'm an idiot. I was just on a thread about COVID and have my mind on CO2 from the crazy people that think masks will poison you. I think this is the most believable theory. Once they found out what had happened, they were probably embarrassed or didn't feel like it was anyone's business, so they just didn't come out about it. Just read about this through the article you shared. How have all those involved, the family, police, medical professionals, remained so mum on what happened? I get the impression they really don't understand themselves. I don't know what the legitimacy of folie à deux is, but it seems reasonable that they all got wrapped up in the paranoia. Like if someone is creeped out, and then you get creeped out too, and then all this stuff happens really fast, and after you're just like, wait, What the frick? Like when SpongeBob was scared of the creepy creatures of the dark, and he bought a crap ton of night lights. Patrick went over to figure out what was going on, but SpongeBob drove him into a similar level of paranoia, which ended up with Patrick burning up in the sun because it was the biggest night light of all. I'd bet money it was the laundry machine. Hear me out. When I was a kid, I was in my basement one day playing with toys or on the Wii or something. My slightly younger sister's best friend was also there. We started talking. Then I suddenly got the feeling that I was being watched, and that whatever was watching was really bad. It was like the most intense feeling of paranoia ever. I'd never felt that way before. And to add to the strangeness, it was bright out. Our basement was most comforting part of the house, and there were even windows so I could see the sun from where I was standing. So it wasn't just out of fear of the dark or unknown. The only sounds I could hear other than us were those of the washer and dryer in our basement. But they'd stopped making noise just a little bit ago. But this super intense paranoia came on, and even at around 8 or 9 years old I knew it was unfounded and not normal. It was probably just imagining it. So to confirm that it was just my imagination, I turned to my sister's best friend who was standing next to me looking around the room. And I asked, "Do you get the feeling that something really bad is about to happen?" And she surprisingly said, "Actually, yes. Do you think that we should run?" "Yeah." And we both sprinted upstairs. And then the feeling was gone. Neither of us could explain what happened, but we both knew there was something weird in that moment. Out of morbid curiosity we both went back down a few minutes later and everything was fine. It took until about 2 years ago, on Reddit, ironically, for me to understand what happened. Apparently, some washing machines, especially older ones, can occasionally make very loud sounds at frequencies just at the edge human range of hearing. Your brain interprets that weirdly as something is happening a lot, but I don't know what it is. And it causes extreme paranoia when you hear it. So overall a very innocent answer to what was probably the creepiest feeling ever. Do you have a link to more about this? It sounds fascinating. Not the person you asked, but I thought I'd mention that it's called infrasound. Unfortunately I don't have any specific links to share. Wikipedia's always a good starting point. Lots of links. A nice deep rabbit hole to fall into. en.wikipedia.org. Edit. Thanks for the well wishes. Yal. My birthday sucked last year, so this is a nice alternative. The whereabouts of the last Gestapo chief Heinrich Müller. The last verified sighting of him was in Berlin roughly 3 days before it fell. He had stated he knew full well what the Russians did to prisoners and he had no intentions of being captured. As chief of the Gestapo he more than likely had access to foreign documents as well as ways to replicate them. Both the CIA and the KGB spent time looking for him, but no trace has ever been found. He probably went to Argentina like the rest of the Nazis. I briefly dated a Brazilian girl that was very German-looking. Turns out her dad's side was German and fled to Brazil. Her grandfather was part of the SS. South America, probably. That was the Nazi fail-safe. Disappear and blend into the country. They think they found a chain of forts in Venezuela used by Nazi officials. Edit. Gang. I may have been thinking Argentina. Either way, I heard about this on a History Channel special. Hunting Hitler or something like that. As far as I know it's somewhat speculative, but a possibility. Fun fact, that's where many Confederates went after losing the war. Fled to Brazil where they had their own town. And the town is called Americana, which is the feminine form of the word American in Portuguese. Edit. A letter. TBH, I might have suspected some connection even without the linguistic heads up. Nice try, Netflix. You have to find interesting unsolved mysteries yourself. Nah man, we're an agency. I bet you can't guess which one. Winking face. Also clear your search history. The Boots Void is a region of outer space that contains no galaxies or stars, and we don't know why. According to Wikipedia, there are 16 known galaxies where there should be around 2,000. Not quite zero, but interesting either way. Those are the galaxies that 2,000 galaxies enter, 60 galaxies leave. Edit. A battle of galactic proportions. Laughing face. Thanks for watching. Last week I asked Reddit the best of recent AskReddit submissions and comments. If you like these videos and want longer versions, check out LWIAR too. And don't forget to like and subscribe.